Hi, I'm back today with Dr. Emma. Hello.
Good morning.
How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Pretty in blue. And today we're talking about adolescent skin and probably acne because that's the commonest problem in adolescence. But this is one of your special interests, isn't it?
So I see a lot of adolescents, and it's always heartbreaking to see how much of an impact skin conditions can have on adolescents, because it's such a hard time in terms of finding yourself, your image, now with social media, all sorts of other things. And I really hate to see them struggling, because actually there's so much that we can do that I really feel strongly that people should be coming forward and getting treatment for any sorts of skin conditions. So yes, a real area of interest and passion of mine.
No, I think that's very true. We see a lot of mums who realise what we can do for their skin, and I think increasing is awareness that you should act, that acne is not a rite of passage, even though it affects 80–85% of all teens in Western society, but actually there are things you can do about it and things that you should do about it.
But this is one of the terrible things if you see someone that's been suffering for quite a long time, because actually people just say, well, you've got a bit of teenage acne, and actually for so many people it's so much more than that. And like you were saying, there's so much that you can do, that why shouldn't we get in rather than just expecting our teens to put up with that? So yes, getting treatment's really important. But like you were saying, 85% of adolescents in the Western society will have acne, and there are lots of different reasons for that. Probably the most common cause of that is the change in hormones that we see. So puberty, adolescence is an area where your hormones are literally up and down all over the place. And hormones are a potent stimulant of your sebaceous glands, the glands that produce oil underneath the skin. So if you then get a drive with all these ups and downs, a bit more oil being produced, the pores getting blocked, and that's a perfect condition for then acne to develop within there.
And I think it's easy to take for granted that teens know what to do with their skin. I mean, girls typically are, watching blogs or reading magazines, and we can make a lot of assumptions about how they take care of the skin or their knowledge of taking care of the skin. But actually, really good, simple advice often somehow gets missed. I see a lot of teens who don't really know how to wash their face.
The simple steps are often missed, like you say. I think it's also part of being so desperate to get your skin better that you sort of think that, the more you put on the skin, actually the likelihood is that your acne will get better. And sometimes that's absolutely not the case. And just stripping everything back to a really simple regime is the best thing that you can actually do for your skin.
Yeah, so I think smart skincare choices, just in terms of the basics, cleanser, moisturiser and sunscreen, and then smart makeup choices as well. So what do you tend to recommend?
In terms of the cleanser and the moisturisers, so oil-free, non-comedogenic products, so something very simple like Cetaphil, I think would often be a good starting point, depending on the sensitivity of your skin as well. There are some other good, La Roche-Posay does some good ranges, Avène does good ranges as well, but very, very straightforward, avoiding any oils. And often what we see is that people have acne, they get marks after their acne, and then they put lots of things like bio oil or things on their face to try and see if they can even out the marks, and actually that makes the whole problem worse, and then you're trying to cover it up with makeups that can often cause and can make the problem worse. So really important, strip back, something super simple, keeping your makeup choices non-comedogenic, and that's a great starting point. Yeah,
I think that's true. And then I think what you tend to see when they start to begin to have acne, you start to see blackheads, typically in the T-zone. At that point, I think you might want to introduce something active, and something simple like 1 or 2% salicylic acid, even as something as simple as a toner type product on pads, or a gel format as a leave-on product is often a good first step, and that's readily available over the counter.
Yes. And I tend to think about my acne in terms of where the spots are. So you were saying it starts off, if you get very superficial pore blockage, it can start off as just some blackheads and some whiteheads, so very superficial whiteheads, and things like salicylic acid are pretty good for those. As you start to get more spots, or the spots start to get lumpier and deeper, you then need to think about changing. So salicylic acid, great place to start if you're just getting some superficial changes. But if things are starting to ramp up and you're getting lumpier spots, then thinking about products like benzoyl peroxide, niacinamide, they can be really helpful as well. And that's sort of my next step if people are starting to get a few more spots, or if the spots are starting to get lumpier.
Yeah, so a bit more activity, need something a little more potent. And then you will need this simple, gentle, supportive skincare range to kind of neutralise the dryness that tends to go along with those sorts of ingredients. However, I think it's important that we recognise at some point you may need more, and to know when that is. And I think for me it's when the spots are, almost coming on a daily basis, the character of them is changing. They're lasting longer, they're deeper, they're sore, they're more red and inflamed, they're leaving marks behind. And certainly even a hint of scarring, I think then is the right time to take more action, and not to sort of just sit back and be resigned and think, this is something I have to go through.
And if it's bothering you as well, so I think people respond very differently to having skin issues.
That's so true.
And if you've got mild changes but it's really bothering you, then actually that's a really good place to start with treatment. And so if you are getting very frequent spots, if you're getting very lumpy sore spots, if you have, like you say, even a hint of scarring, even though we want to get in before then going to seek medical advice, because actually the treatments that penetrate a bit deeper are normally the medical treatments. So then looking creams, occasionally tablets, and really trying to get that acne under control.
I think the other thing to be aware of is that teenagers are often very body aware and self-conscious, and you may not realise what's going on the trunk, on the chest and the back. So I think as a parent, it's a really good idea to sort of check in and see what's going on, because oftentimes things can be a lot more active on the trunk, and I think harder to treat with topicals. So I think actually earlier medical intervention is often needed and warranted, because again, it can be over quite a large surface area. So check what's going on under the t-shirt.
As a dermatologist, treating a teenager with acne is one of the most satisfying things that you can do. It's amazing.
It goes from down here, the hair comes back, the gaze comes up. That's I think quite a powerful thing to see, isn't it?
So if you or your adolescent is suffering with acne, then it's definitely worth getting that sorted out, because it's easy to do.
Yeah, final note, lifestyle, sugar, dairy, plenty of zinc, green leafy stuff, omega-3s. I think these things are important to gently guide your teen towards. I think sometimes it might be difficult to get teens to eat the right thing for sort of health reasons, but I think acne is quite a powerful motivator, don't you, in terms of...
Yes. I think with diet, though, it's always doing that fine line. Adolescents are still growing, they need really balanced food, so I completely agree, try and strip things out, but equally I try not to get adolescents to be too focused on what they eat, in terms of, I try not to make it too restrictive, because I think it's another time where body image and diet and things like that are quite important. So making sure you're making sensible choices, a rounded diet, avoiding too much high glycemic index food, but just keeping them on track.
Good.
Very good.
That's all for today. I hope that was useful. Look after your teen's skin, and see you again soon.
Goodbye.